7 o'clock. And so we'll get started promptly and other people will come in. I want to welcome you all for coming. I see a few new names there. Glad to have you on board. I'm Linda Hathaway, the town clerk. And this is our first attempt at doing a virtual recruitment night. This is actually our 6th recruitment night that I've held. I started in 2010. The moderator and I coordinated one, Ben, and then we ran it until 2015. And then we got sidetracked a while, but I want to do a shout out to Ellen Sturgis, current selectman, who's on this meeting with us. She was a big catalyst of getting this, helping me get this going for this time. And I don't know, Ellen, if you want to just say what prompted you to.
Sure. I had gone, the selectmen get invited every year to the Mass Municipal Association meeting. And usually, there's always 1 or 2 kernels you get from any conference. But this year it was really about inclusion and getting more people involved. And it was, a lot of the issue was around diversity, but as I looked at it for Stow, it's as much about our age diversity. Like we need to start bringing in more of our next generation of residents in. And I think there's a lot of interest, but they don't know exactly where to go or how to find out what their options are. So I had been to Linda's previous events and thought this was just a great way to, especially it's a little safer even on Zoom. You don't have to like walk into a building, you don't know anybody, but you can just listen and hear about a lot of the different committees. And then, then you can just take it with you. You don't have to commit tonight, but just, and then spread the word. And for those of you who are on committees already or chairing committees or just have been around longer, encourage your neighbors and stuff to get involved because I think, need to get more people in. That's all.
So first off, I want to welcome everybody and I thank you for coming. And this hopes to be the first recruitment night. It's mainly for the elected offices, though I have a few appointed committees that are going to fill in with some information for some filler time. We sent out a little survey for those of you that are not a board member, didn't receive it. We sent out a little survey information asking people to answer some questions. And so we hope everybody will answer questions. We'll do 3 different board committees at one time, and then we'll have a Q&A. And what we intend to do is get this up online. And while I'm thinking of it, we're going to start the record. All right, there's a technical difficulty. Hold on. Sorry, I'm just checking here.
But Stow TV is also taping?
Yes. So Stow TV is taping, Jonathan's taping, getting it done. So we will have information online. We're going to have, if you looked on the website, we have links to the some different pages. We will have more information up online, but as far as running for election, some of the dates that we need to remember are the last day to take out papers is March 17th. The last day to turn them in is March 19th. We right now currently have people who are running in every office. We have candidates for all except the Board of Assessors and Housing Authority. But we have 3 candidates running for selectmen, 3 running for school committee, 2 candidates so far for the 2 seats on the library trustees. We have 1 candidate running for planning board, 1 candidate running for Board of Health, and we'll have all this information on the website. But anyway, I think what we'll do is we'll get started. Lori, I'm going to let you go first with the planning board. Do you want to give us, unmute yourself there and give us a little overview of the planning board? And then from the planning board, we'll go to Kristen from the assessors, and then to Marianne and Sharin from the library trustees. And after we get a little bit of overview of your committees, then we'll do a Q&A from the public, if anybody that wants to. Okay, so Lori, you go ahead and start for us.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Lori Clark and I'm representing the planning board tonight. The planning board is a 5-member board and they are elected positions with a rotation that each year one position goes up for re-election. so that there's some continuity on the board. We also have one voting associate member that is appointed annually by the planning board, and we can really designate as many associate members as we want. And so I think if you're interested and you're not necessarily ready to run in an election, you should feel free to start coming to meetings, and you can always ask to be an associate member at any time. We do meet 3 times a month. It's typically the first 3 Tuesdays of every month, unless there are some conflicts with folks. And it's 7 to 10 p.m. Typically, although I'm happy to say we've been getting out earlier than that. And I think we do have a very good support staff in town. We have one full-time town planner. We have an assistant town planner that also does a lot of GIS mapping for not only the planning board, but other town entities. And we have a part-time admin to support us as well. In terms of primary tasks, most people know us as we review and render decisions for applications around different development, subdivisions, land use, and erosion control in town. So most people have seen, because they may have been to a public hearing of one of those. And really with those applications, the planning board is looking to ensure that we're upholding the zoning bylaws. And we also have some subdivision rules and regulations that we have defined in town, and we that can offer guidance to development as well. But in addition to that, we try to proactively maintain the zoning bylaws of the town, which is really about, like I said, land use and erosion control. And the idea of the zoning bylaws is really to help influence and shape future development in town. So I think, there's a bit of the role that is more reacting to applications sort of here and now for development that's up and coming. But there's also, I think, an aspect to it that's more long-term and really helping to shape the future development in town. And if you're not familiar with the bylaws, they're really meant to preserve our environmental resources in town, maintain our open spaces, really encourage the proper balance between residential, commercial, and industrial designations in town, as well as really looking to have a balance of housing choices of different price points in town. So from a background standpoint, I don't think you necessarily need to have any specific experience or background. Really, it will take time to get familiar with the zoning bylaws and really how to read site plans. I was not familiar with our bylaws, nor had I ever looked at a site plan when I started, and I started as an associate member before I decided to run. And then in terms of training, I would say, I think it's sort of a bit of on the job and other members helping by, questioning the answer, but there's also an annual conference that we support sending new members to, that's run out of Holy Cross. It's a citizens planner run by UMass. So I guess I'm going to stop there and I'll make sure we have time for all the others.
Okay, I do have some more questions if they don't fill in, but we're going to skip over to Kristen, and if you can give us an overview of the Board of Assessors, please.
Sure. So I'm Kristen Fox. I'm the principal assessor. The Board of Assessors, a 3-member elected board. The assessors are responsible for valuing and classifying all property in Stow every year. This includes real estate, personal property. We also administer the motor vehicle excise tax, and we are also in charge of administering the Community Preservation Act surcharge on everyone's tax bills. There is some training involved to be on the Board of Assessors. There is a course that is given by the Department of Revenue. It's called Assessing 101. There's also a classification workshop that goes along with that. When you get elected to the Board of Assessors, you have 2 years to complete that training. There is a small test at the end of it, and it's a pass-fail. You have 2 years to do it, but I don't recommend waiting or putting it off for the 2 years, because the problem with doing that is when we have board meetings and we have discussions, especially about abatement applications and, you know, things that require a knowledge of, you know, the statutes that we are governed by and the guidelines from the Department of Revenue. Unless you've had that training and that course, it's going to be really difficult to participate in those discussions. So I highly recommend getting that training done right away, basically. The Board of Assessors themselves, I'm the technical advisor to the Board of Assessors. So me and my staff are in the office 40 hours a week. You know, we're doing the analysis, we're doing the work. The Board of Assessors is basically there to sign documents, you know, warrants and commitments. They sign, you know, certificates when we grant personal exemptions. When we, like I said, when we talk about abatement applications, they sign the certificates granting abatements or denying abatements. The only time the assessors are really, really involved is during the abatement process, where, you know, they have to sit down and I will give them all the facts about each of the applications, and they have to make an informed decision about whether or not they should statutorily grant or deny an abatement. And there are Department of Revenue guidelines that must be met in order to either grant or deny. So like I said, it's important to take that training. You know, it's not a really involved position. We only meet, I'd say, about once a month. In the summer months, when we're not dealing with a hectic time of the year, we tend to have less meetings. The busier times of the year are right now, February, March, April. Those are the busiest times. It can get a little hectic around tax rate setting time, which is in the fall. But like I said, an average of probably one meeting a month for the whole year. So,
Okay.
And I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone is interested after the next person.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Kristen. I made a few notes here for some questions. So if somebody else doesn't ask them, I'll try to. Marianne, would you be mute there and talk about the Randall Library Trustees, please?
Sure. I'm here representing the Randall Library Trustees, and we are all elected officials in town. There are 7 members of the Library Trustees. We don't have any associate members, but we encourage the public to attend our meetings. There's a lot of discussion that ensues. We meet once a month, and presently we're meeting on the first Thursday of the month. They generally last an hour and a half to 2 hours. It really depends on what's on the agenda. It can be lengthy. In the past, we have met more frequently. It really depends on what's going on. A couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago, we met twice a month. So those meetings, although it's fluid, we standard meet once a month, but it's possible to meet more frequently. So what we do, we deal with library policy. We also have a trust fund that we manage that helps with materials. We deal with policy and we manage a trust fund. Mm-hmm. We are advocates for the library in town. We are the ones that are dealing with any kind of movement, books, and I'm going to shut my video off. Sometimes that helps.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so I'm still here. There isn't any particular background that you need to have. It's nice that people are informed about libraries, books. What we do stress is, and I think this is common across a lot of the organizations, is knowledge of open meeting and the laws that ensue around that. And that's all I got.
So, Marianne, I'll come in with my first question. Are there subcommittees that the trustees have, and if there are you liaisons or other commitments?
There can be subcommittees, other subcommittees. It really depends on what is going on at the time. Mm-hmm. Presently, there is, through the selectmen, a building committee to review options and thoughts on the existing structure that we're in and any possible new structures or moves. So there are other subcommittees, and it really is an ad hoc situation when it's pulled together and when it.
Okay. Marianne, could you tell us what drew you to the library, what to be a member? And I think, have you served, you're in the midst of your second term?
I think it's my third term.
Third term. Oh my gosh, time flies.
Yeah, so Linda, I joined because I went to one of these candidate nights so long ago. And I was actually looking at a different group to join, but I was persuaded and influenced by comments I heard about the library. And the library is something that's near and dear to my heart. The library, growing up, I've used the library for a long time, and I think it's a vital part of the town. Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to follow up with another question, then I'll ask anybody else if they want to. You can unmute or put on your video and we'll look at you. But so Kristen, I'm going to go back. You don't have any subcommittees. Are you liaisons to any other boards?
No.
Or your board members?
Oh, actually, we used to have someone on the CPC committee, but we haven't had any board members be interested. And in fact, the last round, we didn't elect anyone. So no takers this last year.
Right. Okay. And then during your discussion, you talked about commitments, of learning about warrants and commitments. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, when, the tax collector and the treasurer, they can't collect any money until the assessors actually commit it to them. So once we do our job, we give them basically a commitment and warrant list, and that's signed by the Board of Assessors, and that allows them to collect the money first. So it's a lot of document signing, and right now with the pandemic, everything is through the internet, PDFs, things like that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then Lori, my question for you, how many terms have you served? Now, before you answer, planning board is a 5-year commitment. And I know it's a lot and I admire anybody who does 1 term and then you get 2 terms. And I've got some that I think, are you on your 3rd?
I'm a little scared because when you asked Marianne, I had to actually count backwards. So I started as an associate member in 2007.
Yeah.
And I believe I ran in 2009 for the first time. So this could be
14.
my 4th, and I'm scared to say that because I'm feeling kind of old when I say that. But don't let the 5-year scare you. Again, if you want to get your feet wet without that commitment, we welcome associate members, and we really treat associate members full participation in our discussions and things of that nature. So please don't let the 5-year commitment scare you off.
So I saw Nancy come in for the, and I think you have a question you want to unmute.
Sorry, my first Zoom meeting. Can you believe it? For a whole year, never had a Zoom. And it's my kid's computer. I'm running for planning board, and it's so funny that Lori says she came on in 2007 because I remember that was the year the Stow Independence started, and I remember talking to her as the first candidate, in our first election we covered. Wow.
I do remember that.
But I have read right now 2 years of minutes of the planning board. So
oh my.
I try not to read it right before bed. But I had a couple questions. One is, I'm wondering if the master plan timeline is coming up and if that would require commitment from planning board members.
We do drive input on the master plan, but it is actually a typically it is a subcommittee appointed by the selectmen, although it typically does have a planning board member on it. And then because the planning board actually are the body that adopts the plan, we do typically spend time reviewing it. Now, our most recent discussions, we've really talked about how do we take it in smaller chunks. Nobody says we have to scrap what we have and rewrite it. So we can take a look and try to drive updates to sections rather than, I mean, the first time around, was quite a bit of work to get it in, but it's really a matter of what sections are still, up to date and what would we want to look to revise. So there's certainly involvement in that.
Yeah, and then I was also curious about other committees besides the meeting night. I know there's public forums and everything, but do planning board members really not serve on other committees, but attend as liaisons on a regular basis?
We don't necessarily attend other board meetings on a regular basis. So there's really not a big commitment there. I would say, I was thinking about this last night as I was preparing, and there's really maybe, a couple times a year, there might be a site walk related to an application, or we actually have a forum coming up later in this month for some proactive long-term planning work that we're trying to drive. So there's a few things that come up there. And as much as, we drive the content for that, not all members necessarily have to attend the forums. I mean, that's really to gather feedback from them.
Just trying to get
I will add that the planning board is a representative on the Community Preservation Committee. Mm-hmm. You do have
that's right.
Somebody is that
is true.
And then you have subcommittees, Lower Village Committee sometimes. Any given year, we typically have had at least one subcommittee going. And lately, it's been more focused on Lower Village as we've really tried to look at that and have some consulting work done so that we can really revise our bylaws to help shape what we want that redevelopment someday to long-term to be, and really start looking at design guidelines and things of that nature.
Okay. Got it.
All set?
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure. Anybody else want to pop in for any questions? Just unmute yourself, give a shout out. I don't have the access to the raise your hand little icons here for some reason, but anybody else have a question for either Marianne, Kristen, or Lori?
Linda, this is Rich Eckel.
Hi, Rich.
How are you?
Good.
I always feel like I'm calling into like a midnight radio show when I do this.
Wait, am I Delilah?
Apparently. So Rich Eckel, 53 Adams Drive. I was just curious, why does the library trustees think that open meeting law knowledge is so critical as a requirement to become a trustee?
We have had issues with that in the past, historically. And instead of avoiding it or stepping into that mess again, we really emphasize that.
So it's a requirement to join the board that you know that? Open meeting law?
It's part of the training once you come on.
Oh, okay.
So
I thought you were saying you need to know it in advance.
No.
Like,
I'm gonna weigh in on that as the kind of the coordinator that hands out open meeting law information and public records information, and we have ethics training and all the other stuff. Once you get elected or appointed to a board, you're given a stack of papers. There is some training that you have to go through, and we do work very hard. We also, there's the Attorney General's office oversees the open meeting law, and we can always ask them questions. And if there are complaints about violations of the open meeting law, those will go to the AG's office. There's a whole procedure and an open meeting law guideline. But you want to be familiar with it, especially once you're on the board.
And Linda, in the past, you brought the AG's representative have come or have done a training as well. So
yes, and actually last year we had one scheduled for March 23rd. And when did we shut down? March 13th. So, or the 25th, one of those. But anyway, we'll do those continually. Anybody else have any questions for these three people? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move along. I know it's, I kind of had this guideline on the, the agenda, but we can move along and we can come back and visit, and I'm sure we'll fill the space. So the next person I have up in the next group is Cortni Frecha from the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board as they would prefer these days. Cortni, there you are.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, we'll move to the Select Board eventually when we go through the processes to change that in various documents and places. So I am wrapping up my second year as a selectman in my first term. We are a 5-member board. We do not have associates. We are elected. And our term is 3 years, as I guess you could do the math there. So we meet twice a month on second and fourth Tuesdays. Very occasionally, we have another meeting for a pressing matter. And we also occasionally have executive session, as some other committees and boards do, when there's some sensitive topic which cannot be discussed in a public meeting yet, but needs to be discussed. So typically our meetings might run an hour to an hour and a half, but if we have an executive session, it might run longer, or if we have a full agenda, we might also run longer or have significant discussions which keep us. Let's see, we have staff. We kind of share staff with the town administrator. So we have two people on staff. We currently have a new executive assistant. We're very excited. Joyce Sampson, and also Phoebe Habercorn, who I'm not sure her title, but I know she is an office assistant and of great excellence. So the selectmen are technically, quoting from the charter, we are the chief executive officers of the town. And so we delegate some of that authority to the town administrator. So we're responsible for forming policies or guidelines which any of the other agencies of the town would follow. We're also responsible in conjunction with any of the other elected and appointed members of town government to develop policy together, which might, it would be designed to bring all town agencies into harmony, quoting from the charter. I love that. And then, as was earlier mentioned, the master plan. So the selectmen are the appointing authority for the committee for that. We're also the appointing authority for many of the other boards and committees where folks are not elected. There are a couple of exceptions. The finance committee is appointed by the town moderator. And there might be another exception that's not springing to mind. So, and then we also are a licensing authority. So permits, one-day permits for events with or without alcohol come through us. All of the licensing for various establishments, fiddlers licenses and liquor licenses come through us. In terms of previous experience or what you might need to know to be a selectman, my observation has been that often it seems that someone is elected to the select board after having served on another board or committee. I think it's really useful to have experience being on some sort of board or committee somewhere, whether it's in our town government or not. And as elected officials, possibly having had the visibility in town government would also make it possible for you to get elected because you would be known in some way. But there's no specific requirement that I know of, except that you're ready to be filmed and have all your meetings be on television. Which isn't a small thing. I mean, I've heard some people say, and it wasn't why I signed up. So the required training again for us is we do have a handbook for the selectmen, but the open meeting law and ethics training is very important. Those laws really are about not discussing things outside of meetings so that everybody has a chance to hear what we're doing. I think that's about what I have to say. I didn't come to the selectmen through the finance committee as many people do. I came, my earliest experience in this this type of volunteering was with the Conservation Commission, and I also immediately became their representative to the Community Preservation Committee, both of which I found valuable experience in order to be on the select board.
Great. Good. All right. Thank you, Cortni. So the next person up is Rich Eckel from the school committee. Rich, I know you're one of the newer members on the committee, but please give us an overview.
Sure. I'm brand spanking new. I just got elected last July. I spent many years on the finance committee before then, which has been helpful. And part of the reason I got onto the school committee was 65 cents of every dollar, it might even be more now, goes to the school budget. And so we could reduce our taxes in town by like 10%, our municipal spending, that is. And it still would only affect 35% of the budget at most. So I also have kids in the school, so that's my other motivation there. So it's an 11 board member that just went up from, I believe, 7. So there's 4 reps in Stow, there's 4 in Lancaster, and then there's 3 in Bolton, who has a smaller population. They're about 8,000. We're about, 7,100, Linda? Is that right?
7,100 residents, yes.
And then Bolton, I think, is closer to 5. So that's why they have 1 less member. So you do get elected. Our major duties are similar to the selectmen in that we have 1 employee, the superintendent, and that we, hire, fire, manage. We are the approver of the budget, and we set policy. So that's distinct from the superintendent who enacts the policy. So we don't do any day-to-day stuff, but we do come up with all the policies and everything. 3-year terms, and they're staggered. So there's 1 position that's going to be vacant at the end of the year because the current, I guess there's an election for 1 school committee member, and she's elected to not continue. She's not going to rerun. What else? So in terms of, what do you need to know? I think to be on you really just need to be passionate about schools and understanding policy. I mean, it would be ideal if you had some sort of background in school administration or municipal finance so that you could bring some skills to the table. I'm a teacher, And I also spent 7 years on the finance committee, so I have a good idea of how municipal finance works. But you're always learning. You don't have to do that. There's plenty of other people that are great at policy or more interested in school communications. What else? What other questions was I supposed to answer, Linda? Did I touch on all of them?
Let's see. Sorry.
That's okay.
Training?
Yeah, the
yes.
training courses that you have to go through.
Thank you, Ms. Sturgis. So for training, you take a 8-hour charting the course that's provided by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. And it's a really interesting course, at least it was to me. I don't know. I like these things. But it teaches you all about how school districts work, the ethics, open meeting law is a part of that. That's not a prerequisite to join the school committee, and I don't believe it is for any other committee. You'll once you get on that, you'll be required, I think, to take an ethics training. Actually, one important thing, as a elected member, you're a special municipal employee, which means you're considered for ethics law to be an employee. So that has, different implications for other, other boards don't have that same level. I think it's elected positions, and then the finance committee is considered the same. So other than that, just like any of these boards, you just got to be a positive contributor, somebody that wants to understand where things are, set a direction where you want it to go, work collaboratively with other people on the committee, and play the political game. It all comes down to the votes.
That's right, getting out the votes. Thank you, Rich. All right, so that I believe is all of our elected official, the boards that let me know that they wanted to participate as elected boards. And we're going to move to some appointed boards. The two boards that are elected that are not participating right now are the historical, housing authority, and the Board of Health. We weren't able to get somebody here for that, but I plan to do a second recruitment night, and we'll get some information about those folks on there now. But I'm going to move over to capital planning. Steve Jelinek, if he's still here, I see the name there. If you could come in and just give us a little overview of capital planning and what you do. I think you're looking for a member, is that correct?
We're always
and some associates.
Always looking for associates. Hi, everybody. Steve Jelinek, Chair of Capital Planning. I'm the first non-elected town official you'll talk to. Capital planning is one of the two sort of principal committees that gets leaned on a lot during the budget season. Capital planning is specifically focused on capital projects. Capital projects, if anybody's ever been to town meeting, has heard me say this a million times. A capital item is something that costs more than $10,000 and has a useful life of more than 3 years. You can tell I've said that several times. Capital planning is charged by the bylaws and the charter to study the town's capital outlay program, which essentially means that we go and ask all the various town departments what they expect to spend as far as capital projects for the ensuing 5 years. And then, we talk to the various departments, we have them come in and talk to us, we find out what it is that they're, planning to spend money on, and we ask a bunch of questions and essentially try to make recommendations to you, the town voters, about whether those projects meet with the town's, objectives and whether they represent good value. So it's an all appointed committee. There are two members that are appointed by various departments or various boards. The selectmen appoint a member and the finance committee appoint a member. The other members are appointed by the moderator. There's 5 members. voting members and 2 associates. And as I think Linda mentioned, we currently have the 5 voting members, but we're always looking for associates. The terms are for the members that are appointed by the moderator, the terms are 3 years. I believe the terms for the other appointed members are a single year, but folks tend to get reappointed. So
That's true.
Let's see. We meet primarily during budget season. So we typically start meeting in January. We meet a couple of times a month for the next 2 or 3 months. Meetings are typically run a couple of hours. The objective of those meetings is to sit down and talk to the various departments and find out what it is they're planning to do and what it is they're going to be spending their money on and how they come up with their estimates and whether there's any way that can be changed or trimmed or whatever. And then we make recommendations at town meeting and occasionally there is something besides like a truck or a fire truck or a highway truck. So things like land purchases also count as capital. So whenever there's a special article with respect to land purchase, capital planning is asked to be part of that. How things get funded is not really part of our charter. So if something is going to be funded by the Community Preservation Act, we still, by charter and bylaw are required to look at it. So let's see, as far as training, really just the ethics training that everybody goes through. I'd say, kind of what Rich was saying about, really what we're looking for is folks that are interested in the way this town functions and are sort of curious about, the various relationship between the town departments and each other and the voters. And there's no special requirements that are needed. I mean, it's helpful if you understand a little bit about financial stuff, but mostly that's just sort of common sense. I think that's about it. Linda, did I forget anything?
No, I think I was looking through the little notes here. I think you hit on everything. I just wanted to know, you've been serving a long time. Did you? You've gone through several reappointments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember.
You're making everybody feel old. You keep asking us how long.
No, I'm in my 21st year, so I'm probably the oldest.
Yeah, I think I'm on my 4th appointment.
That's great. What drew you to the capital planning?
Jean Lynch.
Yep. Okay, for those of you who might not know Jean, she used to own Shelburne Farm.
So I said, okay.
Good for you. She recruited a lot of people, I think. Let's see, that was one of the questions I had for you. Cortni, my question to you was what really drew you to this Board of Selectmen? You'll have to unmute.
I was interested in the process of selecting a new town administrator.
Very
But
well.
it was quite a moment. And it was.
Yes, it is. So those were those 2 questions. And I know Rich, my questions, I actually didn't have an awful lot for you but you started out at FinCom and then decided to do the school committee and be involved that way. So, the service that all of you are doing for the town has been great, and the dedication and wanting to continue to serve. I know sometimes the comments that you make at a committee meeting and recommendations are not, town meeting might vote the opposite way that you were thinking of that it would go. And so I do appreciate your service and the amount of time and work that you do there. I did want to just comment on, before I forget about it, Rich mentioned special municipal employees. So that selectmen can vote on all the boards and committees that are volunteer. And in the town of Stow, they've elected to make every board and committee and every position that can qualify to be designated as special municipal employees to do so, because that allows you to be on multiple boards. If you weren't designated special municipal employees, then you would be restricted. So that's all in part of the ethics. And one of the other comments I did want to make before I go to the next group, the charter. I have the charter. The charter is online. It gives a lot of information about the elected positions and processes. So even if you're not interested in running now, or you want to know more about how we function, I consider the charter like our constitution, and our bylaws, which several people have referenced, also that's kind of like the flesh on the bones. And so it gives you more detailed information. The charter is a multi-step process to change. And we are going to have to go into it and have a charter review committee. The changes get reviewed at town meeting and voted. And then the following annual election, those changes are voted on by town meeting, by the ballot. And then if they're approved, then they get it, the charter gets changed. Bylaws can be done regularly at annual town meeting or special town meeting on both zoning and general bylaws. So these documents are online. You should be able to find them if you do a search in the search window and find them that way.
Hey, Linda?
Yes.
I sort of a question or comment for Rich and school committee, having been school committee member. One is, I don't think he talked about subcommittees, which is a big part of the school committee.
Right.
But also, I would just say that for people who are thinking about running, a couple of things, sort of the same way Cortni talked about, she was interested in getting on the select board because of the hiring a town administrator. The high school project coming up is of great interest, obviously, to everybody on many levels. And so that's another, I think, a school committee is, I would say, a challenging, maybe one, except for planning board. I'm not sure if it meets planning board in terms of challenge and demand, but it's a lot of work, but it's really important. As Rich said, it's 67 or more % of our budget. And having people who understand that financial piece, but also appreciate the cost of a good education and building is going to be a big part of it for the next term. So that would be just my encouraging.
You're speaking as a former chair of the school building committee for the Senate.
A lot of fun. There's a lot of people who survived that committee and actually got on other committees because we had so much fun.
Here.
Right,
Bill Byron, others. Anybody else in the public want to pipe in, or even of the committee members, kind of unmute yourself, give a shout out. Any questions, Cortni?
I should add that in addition to our 2 monthly meetings, the selectmen do have liaison appointments. We each have several, like maybe 4 or 5 or 6. And so that entails sitting in on those meetings and or catching up with the chair or something to know what's going on in those boards or committees so that we can just talk about it in the selectmen's meeting if there's something going on that's out of the ordinary.
Okay. Anybody else? Rich?
Yeah, just to Ellen's point, I should have mentioned subcommittees. Thanks for Ellen for that prompt. So I'm on the Budget and Warrant Committee, which works with the district to come up with the budget. We also review the warrants, which are the spending each month, and we sign them so that the school can, and we give that to the treasurer, and the treasurer can then pay the town employees and the other vendors and stuff like that. And then there are plenty of other committees that you can join. There's a superintendent search that's coming up that if you have time you can do. There's other members that are on the school committee. The school building project that Ellen mentioned. So you can really go crazy if you want to.
Right. What about the Nashoba Audit Advisory Committee? Is that?
Oh yeah.
Is there a school committee member on that?
Yeah, I'm the representative. So there's 3 at-large members that are appointed by the towns. So I'm sorry, they're appointed by the Board of Selectmen and the Finance committees. So we're in the process of getting a new person appointed.
Right.
Or by we, I mean the Finance Committee and the Select Board. And then I'm the one that was appointed by the school committee to be on that. And so that's a small committee. It meets like a couple times a year,
right.
Unless you're selecting a new auditor. Did I answer that question?
No, that's exactly fine. Anybody else have questions?
Yeah, hey, Linda, in spirit of full disclosure, I should point out that capital planning does have members that serve on other town committees, particularly that have to do with things that involve spending tons of money. Ellen, I know we had somebody on the school building committee. We had a representative on the Pompo building committee.
That's true. That's right.
We
Fire
have
station committee.
On the town hall restoration committee. We also have a representative on the library building committee. So it's not as extensive as some of the things that are required of selectmen or even school committee, but we're not completely isolated either. So.
Right, but it could be correct me if I'm wrong, it could be a member or you could have a designee. Is that correct? Like someone that...
Capital planning could, if we wanted, if somebody was interested and wasn't actually a member of capital planning and wanted to be representative on, one of the committees.
Town hall or something.
We've done that in the past as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else with questions? We'll move on to the next group. All right. Hearing none, I'm going to move to Erica Benedick from the Finance Committee. Erica, hi there. Can you give us a little overview of what's going on with the Finance Committee?
Sure, no problem. My name is Erica Benedick. I am the current chair of the Finance Committee. I was just trying to remember how many years. I think it's been 3, maybe 4. I think 3 feels right though, which means I probably have some paperwork I have to do soon now that I'm thinking about it. I should get that. But we are an appointed committee, so you don't have to run for election. We are 5 members. We are currently full, but one of our members is running for select board in the spring. So depending on how that goes, I might be looking for a 5th member, but we also do have associate members that are 1-year terms, and we can have as many of those as we want. No, Linda's telling me I can't. How many, Linda? 5? Okay, good to know. I don't think I'll hit that cap. It's okay. So we typically meet, during budget season, we typically meet every 2 weeks for like an hour and a half, 2 hours tops if we have a heavy agenda, but that's really just this time of year. And then it's significantly lighter the rest of the year. We also we're on liaison committees as well. So we have an associate member who is with Steve on capital planning. I also sit on the community preservation committee. We have somebody who's on the high school building committee right now and the library building committee. So that is a little bit extra work on top of finance. But if you really want to know the nuts and bolts of what's happening in town, the finance committee is the great place to start because you get to see where every last penny goes. It really gives you a good sense of what's happening, not just with the school committee, which is, I know where a significant portion of our funds go, but the highway department and all these other things you never really think about. Finance committee is where you get all that information. We do have a dedicated staff member. Thank goodness. I don't know what I would do without her. And we oversee the reserve fund. So we are mostly an advisory committee, but we do have funds that we oversee so that if a department goes over on their budget, they can come to us and ask for a reserve fund transfer. And then it really gives you a good sense of how well are we budgeting for these things. Year over year, are the same groups having to come back for more money. Let's see, what else? I think I hit all of your high points there, Linda. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you got them. Ellen, I think we hit all of those. let's see. I think we'll wait until we get through the next couple of people and then we'll come back for question and answers from the group. Is that all right?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, Mark Jones, for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Chairman here. Could you unmute and give us a little update and overview?
Okay, so I'm Mark Jones. At the moment, I'm the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We are appointed by the Select Board. We have 5 full members and they have 5-year terms. So it's a rolling, 1 term expires per year. At the moment, 4 of those full memberships are filled, and we're anticipating that we will have a resignation of one of those full members in the next several months. So we will be down to 3 full members. We are capable of having 6 associates, and I believe that we at present have 4 associates. The associates can serve when a full member is absent or has a conflict of interest or otherwise is unable or desires not to participate in a particular hearing. So we can promote an associate to become a full member for the moment of that decision and hearing process. And the associates are, at least as how I try to organize the ZBA, are able to attend as often as they wish, and I hope to have them be trained through the process of being exposed to the process so that they can step up when that moment arises where we need to take advantage of an associate member to being a full participant. The ZBA meets about twice a month on average. We have a formal once a month meeting, usually the first Monday of the month, and then somewhat ad hoc as need arises and other topics are desirable to make headway on, sometimes for a hearing or sometimes for housekeeping, as in we're working on our rules and regulations right now. So we've been lately meeting a 2nd time a month, very occasionally a 3rd time a month. We do have those meetings, they happen, they're typically at least 2 hours, often from 7:30 to 9:30 seems to be our fairly typical, or 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We do have a dedicated and paid staff member, and that's Karen Kelleher. She's our part-time secretary. Actually, in my view, assistant planner in terms of her previous experience. She provides a great deal to the board through her knowledge and experience. The major tasks of the ZBA, we have several categories. One is that we hear appeals of the building inspector, building commissioner decisions that he or she may make. The president's he. If somebody who wants a permit for a building and the building inspector believes one thing and the applicant believes another, they can appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Also, if somebody has, perhaps they're in a butter and there's something they feel the building inspector should inspect for not complying with the bylaw, and if they're unsatisfied with the building inspector's decisions, they can appeal in that regard to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We also here are involved in special permits. Typically, these are for relatively conforming construction on a non-conforming lot, and by non-conforming, that is often having to do with less than the bylaws request for frontage or for area. Standard area is 1.5 acres for a residential lot. So there are special permits if you want to expand your house, if you're in a slightly smaller lot. And there are other special permits. We're involved partially for signage and for special permits for kennels. If somebody has a large number of dogs, we will be the body that hears a special permit to allow a kennel. And there may be a few other permits that we have not been engaged with that may come up before us. We also hear variances where in some significant factor, a lot is non-conforming, and in order to build, the owner of a lot needs to have the bylaws varied in some fashion for setback, mostly in relation to setback, in relation to making use of their lot because their lot is so small. So we would hear whether it's reasonable and desirable to allow a variance of the bylaw. And then perhaps significant in a completely different way is that the Zoning Board of Appeals acts as if it is several boards at once for Chapter 40B affordable housing projects. So an example that is very visible to people is the villages at Stow, at Hudson Road and Route 117. That's a so-called 40B project, which because a certain fraction, I believe it's 25%, was made affordable. That project was allowed to build in a way and manner that was not necessarily allowed by the zoning bylaw, but through the statutory process came to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit to allow that particular project. Other projects of that nature we're hearing and have recently heard for an expansion of the Plantation Apartments project, and have granted a permit for that to occur at some point in the future. So it's a slightly varied agenda in terms of all of those categories of things that we attend to. As for background and experience, it's helpful but not required that you have sort of seen the planning board work, and perhaps even have been on the planning board to have some familiarity with the Stow zoning bylaws and some of the processes that they go through. But it is not necessary. In terms of things that are desirable for a new member to learn about and understand is to read and understand the Mass General Laws 41A and 41B, which are mostly to do with building and zoning for the state, and give us guidance and direction and tell us what our authority is as Zoning Board of Appeals. And in general, it's desirable that you have a strong interest in trying to be in a disinterested way, trying to do the right thing where there's a conflict between the bylaws and what the applicant desires, and trying to have a judgment about what is reasonable, and to have some understanding about what the statute considers to be reasonable when we make decisions, either for the various categories that we pay attention to. And then, as in for all committees, it's desirable for members to understand about the open meeting law. So that's the not so brief summary.
Great. All right. I'm going to see if is Dot Spalding available to talk about the Historical Commission? Does she want to talk about it, or Bill? Or I know we have an open position on the Historical Commission. Bill, I think Bill's checking, but
we could also talk about Council on Aging.
Oh, that's right. Bill could talk about Council on Aging as the chairman.
I'm liaison. I was just going to say it, since he didn't want to talk about it. I'm the liaison for the Select Board, and I would just say we just had a resignation recently. So if someone's interested in Council on Aging, they should talk to us.
There's two on the zoning, two on the Council on Aging.
That's right.
Two on the Council on Aging. I do have some. I have a little bit of filler time, just to let you know. There, Agricultural Commission has opening for 2 members. There is a requirement that they be a resident of Stow or a resident of Massachusetts who operates a farm in Stow. You have to have a farm of farming, so that's a little bit of requirement. All of these, the vacancy notices are on our website under boards and committees. And so you can find that, but we have charter review that has, needs to be appointed that applies to the moderator, and we hope to get that started. Conservation Commission has a one opening. The Council on Aging, as Ellen mentioned, has 2 openings. The Historical Commission looks for 1 member. And so if you're interested in that, you know, follow up with the selectman or Dot Spalding and, or, you know, attend one of their meetings. Their meetings are typically, I think, on Thursdays, the first Thursday. Open Space is looking for 2 members. Spring Fest is looking for some members. I'm not sure that we'll have a Spring Fest this year, but maybe it, you know, definitely work on for the following year. The council and the Cultural Council are looking for 3 members for the next funding cycle. And there is a relatively new committee started in December called the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. So we have those as well. And like I said, those, there are more information are on the town website under boards and committees vacancies. What I'm going to, I see Bill back. Did Dot want to say anything? Bill, did Dot want to speak about the Historical Commission? No? Okay. That's all right. So I'm going to move on to one of the things that that I work with is the Board of Registrars of Voters. The registrars of voters of 4 members. The town clerk is automatically 1 and it can be registered as unenrolled, but the other 3 members must be in a political party. And right now we have Debbie Seith as the Republican, Nancy Arsenal as a Democrat, and we have an opening for a board member. And you can be either Republican or Democrat, but you have to be amongst one of the political parties. And if you're interested in, give me a call when we talk more about it, or send me an email, or we'll follow up with that. Registrars of voters certify the signatures on petitions and nomination papers, responsible for the census, voter registration. Oh, that reminds me. In order to be elected to a position, you have to be a registered voter of Stow. And in most committees, one of the requirements is to be a registered voter. Some do allow a Stow resident, but typically it's, you know, a registered voter. So that would be an important piece. And so that was a little overview of what we have for appointed positions. Anybody have questions for the last 3 speakers? Erica or Mark or myself? Anybody? Rich.
I had a question of Erica. Erica, is it true that if you really want to understand how the town works, you should join the finance committee?
I think you could say that about a lot of the committees in Stow, Rich.
I would agree with you, Rich, that it's very important because you really see what boards spend their money on and understand the details. One of the things I was going to mention about the finance committee is one of the responsibilities is at every town meeting on every article, you make a recommendation, and there's a lot of thought that goes into, you know, the boards and committees, and you meet with these departments and understand what their needs are. So,
and traditionally, well, the board also writes the annual report for the town, and or at least the finance committee's annual report for the town. Because I think that
I was going to say we don't write the whole thing. Don't put that on me.
Yeah, the selectmen do a part of that too. I guess every board writes something, right?
So actually, so Rich, I'll address that, but go ahead with your next comment.
No, I was just going to say, and also traditionally the chair of the finance committee, something Erica's looking forward to, presents their narrative to the town as well at town meeting.
So Rich, you brought up the annual report. The Selectman's Office is responsible for gathering all the reports from all the committees and putting it together in our annual report, the booklet. And each committee does a detailed report of what has gone on in the past year. It's done on a calendar year basis. Most of the reports are. There might be a few that are a fiscal year, but most of them are done on a calendar year. And we actually have reports, annual reports that go back into the 1800s. And we, one of our community preservation projects that the clerk's office was responsible for was to get funding using the community preservation funds to get the, preserve all of the annual reports. And we spent $85,000 doing them along with selectmen's minutes and some others, so that they've been deacidified and they're in protective coverings and stored. And also that we have digital, they're digital, and now we're working on getting them so that they'll be available online and be searchable. So that was my, the reserve fund transfer, Erica, what's the amount that you're using with now?
I am sorry, I do not know off the top of my head. We have had some funds come out this year, so I can't.
Right, no, but the total you start with, you get something in a reserve fund every year that the boards and committees, like if, for instance, elections, I was short money because we had a lot of early voting, so I could have come to the finance committee and asked for funds to cover these unexpected expenses. Do you start with 70,000 or?
I believe, you know what, I have to double check because I know it went up last year and I can't remember how much it went up by.
But it was at least 70,000.
It was at least 70,000, but I think it actually was a little bit more this year, but I'd have to let you know.
Okay, no, that's fine. It was just a comment. Does anybody else have a question for this group? Anybody?
Erica, it went up by,
what?
It went up by 10 grand. It's 80 grand this year.
Okay, Rich is former.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Anybody else have a question? The only thing that I wanted to, I was trying to think of the 40B projects that you were talking about, Mark. I think Pilot Grove, Plantation, Villages of Stow, and I think Elm Ridge was another 40B project. And it's Mass General Law Chapter 40A and 40B, right?
That's right. I misspoke and said 41. It's
That's
40.
right. I know Karen's on here, so she might have a better idea if I've been correct on identifying 40Bs, but
I believe that's correct. For Elm Ridge, it's one of the projects in addition to the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah, Elm Ridge, yeah. I know we've had a couple of applications, but they haven't been completed. But, anybody else? No? So the last thing I will do is say, if you're interested in running, we do have candidates for most of the offices, but I love contested races because it turns out the voters, I'm expecting that we're going to have at least 1,800 turnout. In a year when we don't have very many contested races, we might have anywhere around 1,200. Last year, I think we had 15 with vote by mail. I'm waiting for the legislature to pass legislation that allows us to do vote by mail again for this year. Right now, they've okayed it till March 31st, and they're discussing having vote by mail become available for anybody holding town meetings from April 1st to June 30th. And right now, our election scheduled for Saturday on May 8th at Center School. The polling hours are still to be set. I'll be speaking to the selectmen about that at one of their future meetings. But we'll keep you posted on vote by mail. I think it was a big success last year. I'm a very big proponent of it. I'm always looking for more election workers. If you're interested, email me, call me. We'll sign you up. It's a lot of fun. I look at elections as being a party for the whole town. You invite 5,000 residents, voters to show up, and you hope they all show up, and it's like throwing a party all day long. I think if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call or ask. Take out nomination papers. Those of you who have had them out, got them signed already, let's get them in. Got a lot of work to do to get those all certified. That's one of the things I said the registrars of voters do. I do most of the data entry, and the registrars double check my work. So anybody else with a question? Anybody?
I have one more question, Linda.
Sure.
So, I'm just interested, for the register of voters, is it a town rule or a state rule that it has to be a party member?
State, mass general law.
Got to change that. Okay. We have more unregistered, unenrolled than we do party people. So it seems like that shouldn't be, but.
Correct. In Stow, the bulk of our registered voters are unenrolled. The next group is the Democrats and then the Republicans. But anyway, so a lot of the stuff, everything that we do is guided by mass general law, the charter, or our general bylaws. So anyway, thank you all for coming. I am thrilled. This is great. I hope I see some names there and I don't know who you are, but thanks for coming out and I hope you'll get involved. We've got lots of places and a lot of work to do. And without these dedicated volunteers, we couldn't do it. And I thank all of you for serving. Thank you. All right. I think we're done. Good night.